If you had to pick an ecosystem to live in, what would it be?
Oh, I mean, I feel like the one I live in is pretty like livable, you know? It feels pretty ideal for human sustainability.
I guess it's been a wet year.
Yeah, but that's better than a dry year, you know?
I guess, but the grass is always drier on the other side.
No, you know what I could do with is more mountains and rivers. I'm a big mountains and rivers gal.
The mountains and rivers ecosystem.
Yeah, I didn't know like what to call that because I don't want to be like up in the mountains. I want to be like down next to the mountains.
I love that, Emily. I think that's a really picturesque location that you've chosen for yourself.
How about you? Yeah. You want to live in Alaska, I assume?
Are there penguins in Alaska?
I don't think so. There are penguins in Africa.
Yeah, I was going to say there are penguins in Africa, which is not Antarctica. So maybe I'm going to go to Africa.
Feels like that's better, you know?
It's definitely a
not
plus.
Antarctica is already an improvement.
List of pros.
But also, like, if that's your only concern, Kyle, you could also go live at the Long Island Aquarium.
Or some sort of zoo. Honestly, these are all good locations for me.
Welcome to Butter No Parsnips. Every week on Butter No Parsnips, your hosts Kyle Imperator and Emily Moyers take you on an adventure through the weird, wacky, wonderful, and sometimes even wicked world of one wayside word. Strange characters, delightful bits, and general joyousness abound. Join them as they test each other's etymological expertise.
Hey everybody, welcome to Butter No Parsnips. I'm Emily Moyers.
And I'm Kyle Imperator.
Kyle, I feel like this you're going to take me on a journey with this word based on this location-based intro, but I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, Emily, I have a journey for you today. You're going to strap in, get into your the Jeep.
Yep.
Put on your hat.
Yep. I've got my safari onesie. You know what I mean?
Safari onesie.
It's like a safari shirt and safari shorts, but it's one piece.
Yes. Yeah, I was picturing footy pajamas.
No, like a romper, like a beige romper.
Yeah, a romper for you, a rompin' for me. I got it. Emily, are you ready for your word?
Yes, Kyle.
Emily, your word today is Vlei. Vlei. Vlei.
What part of speech could this possibly be?
Vlei is a noun.
Thank goodness, because if you were about to tell me to vlei, I was going to jump out of a window.
I think that's what you say when someone has given you a comeback.
No, to vlei is what Wesley said instead of true love.
To vlei.
To vlei. But it's a vlei.
It's a vlei.
Is it a countable noun?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It can also be uncountable now I think about it.
You can just have the concept of vlei.
No, I lied. That's just a straight up lie. Don't listen to me. I have no authority.
Okay. So 50% of the things Kyle's going to say in this intro are true and 50% are lies. Okay. And the language of origin is... like Slavic?
No, further west, it's Dutch.
It's Dutch.
It's Dutch. It can also be pronounced Vlei or Vlei or fly.
Sure. Yeah, I can see the logic behind all of those.
Yeah.
All right. So my one crazy wild guess.
One true guess.
A Vlei it's an article of clothing for a specific type of adverse weather.
Yeah, I mean, love it. That's really good. That's that romper that you were talking about. It's a Vlei.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kyle, give me a hint.
Emily, your hint is Shrek.
I would like a new hint. I'm going to send that one back to the kitchen. Tell the chef I didn't care for it.
Nope, it's the only hint you got. Sorry, bud. Shrek.
So this is a Dutch word. It's a noun.
Yep.
The hint is Shrek.
You've got it.
And at the beginning, you asked me what my favorite ecosystem was. These are the clues that I have I have to put together to make one thing.
You got it, Columbo. You can get it. You can get there.
Just one more thing. Okay. A Vlei. All right. Oh, okay. Okay. So if we're talking about swamps, is a Vlei a swamp?
Emily, you got it.
Yes. I was like, Shrek, ecosystem.
Yeah, that's where I was going with the hint.
Jimmy Neutron brain blast.
So a Vlei is a wetland, marsh, or swamp.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're going to start with a slightly different meaning of the word, a less broad meaning of the word Vlei.
Okay.
So in South African English, a Vlei is a type of shallow wetland, a minor lake or a pool of water, or the lowland where such a wetland appears during the rainy season.
Sure. And it being Dutch makes sense because imperialism.
Because imperialism, which we're going to talk a lot about today, Em. So hold all of your knowledge about imperialism for 3 minutes from now.
Okay. I like that it's both the wetland after it has gotten wet and the wetland before it has gotten wet.
It is. Yeah, it's just the name for all of it, you know?
That's fun.
It's because it's like, yeah, what do you call a wetland when it's not wet?
Yeah, it's like it is still it.
Yeah. So this covers both of it. So it's a borrowing from the Afrikaans word Vlei, which also meant marsh or wetland.
So that's why this word can be pronounced Vlei?
That's exactly why, Emily.
Yeah.
And in South African English, they do pronounce it Vlei.
Sure.
More often than not. But, you know, in the UK and the US, we just read it as it is.
Yeah, so we're going to look at a V and say
yeah. Vlei, the Afrikaans word, comes from a reduced form of the South African Dutch word vallei, which meant valley.
Oh, sure, because it's like a lowland.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That Dutch word comes from the Middle Dutch vallei, the Old French valleie and val, and the Latin ualis, which all meant valley and are possibly derived from the Proto-Indo-European welch, which means to turn or to wind.
It just sounds like you were insulted and you were like, well, I never.
and what one does when they says that is they turn away.
Exactly. That was my next thought.
Disgust. Emily, can you posit any other words that may have extended from this root? Well,
like the thing you get water from?
No, Emily, that actually comes from a different Proto-Indo-European root.
Doesn't it always?
Also pronounced well.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but that one means to choose or to want.
Oh, well, that's super interesting, but that's a topic for another day. What else comes from this? Valley. Which we didn't specifically say. Sorry, I thought that one was a given. I was skipping over that one.
Yeah. So the English valley comes from the Old French vallée through Anglo-Norman and Middle English, but also the similar but less common word vale, V-A-L-E, which means a valley. It also comes from Old French, but from the Old French val, and that also comes through Middle English. Are you familiar with vales?
I've definitely heard the word before, but I think in my head I had conflated it with pale, like beyond the pale.
Oh, interesting. Like beyond the veil.
Beyond the veil.
I think that might be something but V-E-I-L.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I think you're right. I think I jumbled all three of those words together in my head.
It's just a word soup up in there.
Isn't it just? Yeah, but veil, V-A-L-E. And it just means valley?
Just
Also?
means valley. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. Well, Emily, lastly, from that Proto-Indo-European root, comes wall, W-A-L-L, through the Latin wallum.
How do we get wall from turn away?
I
guess because when you hit the wall, you have to turn around.
Yeah, it's like, all right.
Reach the end of it.
I guess so, honestly. No idea.
Interesting. That seems so far.
Well, speaking of far, Emily, and the far reaches of the earth.
Good segue.
We're going Dutch today, Emily. You ready?
I'm rarin' ready.
You're raring, you're rooping and hollering.
I'm rooping and a romping.
Emily, what do you know about Dutch colonialism?
I know that it was.
Do you know that
I know
it was?
they were in Africa a bunch, but I think there's Dutch influence in the States too, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that later.
Okay.
But for some background on Dutch colonialism, I'll fill in the gaps here.
Please. I have so many.
So shortly after the Dutch Republic was formed in the late 1500s, through a combination of skilled labor, good work ethic, and corporate finance, the Confederation was ushered into what's known as the Dutch Golden Age. Ooh.
Glitter, sparkle.
As a part of this economic boom, Emily, the Dutch followed in the footsteps of the English and began funding chartered companies, or associations of shareholders given exclusive rights to build the Dutch Empire abroad. And the most important of which was the Dutch East India Company.
Yeah, because there was also like an English East India Company. That's like the one that's being semi-portrayed in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
Like in Pirates of the Caribbean, it's called the East India Trading Company, but it's
right.
I think meant to be like related.
Right. They couldn't use the actual name because it was already trademarked.
But there was a Dutch East India Company separately?
Yeah. So literally in direct imitation of the English's East India Company, which is, the one that colonized Hong Kong.
Right.
The Dutch used their East India Company to colonize for trade. And in the 1650s, the company began colonizing South Africa from their trading post at the Cape of Good Hope. The company was originally founded to colonize the East Indies area that's now like mostly Malaysia.
Yeah.
But way later, they were like, South Africa's nice. Let's go there. And in this Dutch Cape colony, Emily, a new language was formed. Afrikaans, which is just Dutch for African.
Right.
What do you know about Afrikaans?
Pretty much that much.
Yeah.
I know that it's some Dutch and some African, and that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. As a language, it's estimated that 90 to 95% of Afrikaans words are Dutch in origin, and recent research suggests that the mutual intelligibility, or the ability to be understood between Afrikaans and Dutch, is greater than even that of Dutch and Frisian, which is a language spoken in the Netherlands, and which we've covered previously on episode 50, Shibboleth.
Incredible. So is Afrikaans like a language that started as a pidgin?
Great question, Emily. The answer is we don't exactly know, but linguist Hans den Besten theorizes that the language developed from a mixture of gradual divergence from European Dutch by the wealthy Cape Dutch population and a pidgin language spoken by the enslaved indigenous Khoikhoi peoples.
So, like, it is a pidgin, but, like, more leaning towards Dutch than the other? It's not really a midpoint?
Yeah, there's probably influences from both. But I don't know if there's exactly proof that there was a pidgin, but they were like, there must have been a pidgin,
Sure.
So
yeah, it's if we've got people mixing, then there literally has to be.
Exactly.
But I imagine in a colonizing scenario, like the language of the colonizer is going to be more present by force.
Yes, by force, which is a great segue for me to state, as with any story of colonization, The history of the Dutch Cape Colony is fraught with the European spread of disease and human rights violations, which is an item that we cannot properly cover today, but I would be remiss to gloss over entirely.
Yeah, it's bad stuff.
It's bad stuff. It's a bad stuff. But, Emily, the first Afrikaans texts didn't appear until the late 1700s, which is nearly 150 years after the establishment of the colony, and shortly before that colony's conquest by the British. And from the languages mingling with English came these Afrikaans terms for South African ecosystems.
So the English, took it from the Dutch, this area?
Yeah, the English took over the Cape Dutch colony.
Freaking mess we all made down there.
Yeah, there's so much messy history here.
Yes. And then from our perspective on a language podcast, it makes tracing word origins messy as well.
So hard, Emily, because I'm looking up Afrikaans, Dutch, South African English, English, and trying to see how they all combine, and it's a lot. But back to South Africa, Emily. One of the ecosystems that is unique to Southern Africa is the Vlei, which is a seasonal ecosystem. So during the wet, rainy season, the Vleis appear as shallow, marshy lakes that are home to a wide variety of fauna and flora. The rest of the year, during the dry season, the water either evaporates or it soaks into the ground, leaving these marshy depressions and dried mud. Sure.
Do you know, what time span, of the year?
Yes, it depends on where it is in Africa, because different parts of Africa have their winters and summers at opposite times of the year. Yeah, it was difficult for me to understand, and I may be getting this wrong, but I think that in South Africa, at least, where many of the Vleis are, the winter rainy months are between November and March, and then the summer dry season is the rest of the year.
Gotcha.
Many Vleis are too small to necessitate naming, but plenty are important enough to have become landmarks and nature reserves, such as the Zandvlei, an estuary in Cape Town. A sand vlei.
Sure.
There's a lot of those that are nature preserves and, fishing spots, and there's a lot.
Yeah. So if it's an estuary, that's got to be on the coast, right? Because I think an estuary is where freshwater and saltwater meet.
Oh, sure. Yes, that's a great.
Mistaken.
I knew that, definitely. But yeah,
I look into a lot of nitty-gritty geography things when I'm drawing maps for D&D.
Sure.
Because my brain is it has to be geographically sound.
Well, Emily, you got to put some Vleis in your maps.
I'll usually just put a whole swath that I'm this is marshland, non-specific. But now I can think about it more deeply.
Yeah, I imagine that Cape Town is very close to the
Cape,
to the water. Yeah. As I intimated earlier, the word Vlei can also refer to the area in which Vleis appear, as is the case with Sossusvlei in Namibia, which is just northwest of South Africa. And Sossusvlei contains 3 large Vleis that are very popular. There's the eponymous Sossusvlei. There's Hidden Vlei, which is, a little out of the way, but very pretty.
That was my favorite game as a kid, Hidden Vlei.
Hidden Vlei.
Yeah, we didn't play hide and seek. We played Hidden Vlei.
Dear God, Emily.
No, not that Vlei. This Vlei.
Oh, yeah, sure. And the last is Dead Vlei.
Oh, yeah, that's how that game ended.
Yeah. Dead Vlei, as the name suggests, was once a Vlei that has since completely dried up, as its source of water, in this case the Sauhop River, was cut off by the surrounding sand dunes, which kept growing and growing. And these include the amusingly named Big Mama and Big Daddy.
Incredible.
A bunch of the dunes are some of the highest dunes,
sure,
in, I guess, South Africa. And so they're big landmarks. It's a really nice tourist attraction.
Sure.
But there's some like really nice pictures.
Yeah, it sounds very picturesque.
Dead Vlei is on a website dedicated to areas, real life areas that look like they're from Wes Anderson films.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Emily, as you can imagine, the ephemerality of these landmarks makes them a fascinating part of local culture and folklore, right?
Right, because it's like changing.
It's like changing. It's like, oh, what is making this change, A great example of this is the legend of Princess Vlei, also in Cape Town.
Princess Vlei?
So the legend tells of a maiden, which is sometimes a princess of the Khoikhoi and San peoples, which is another indigenous culture in the region.
Mhm.
And this princess was caught watching Portuguese explorers at her favorite bathing spot on the Cape Flats. Now, these explorers, they chased her, and she escaped to a cave known as Elephant's Eye, where she wept eternally, forming the Prince and Princess Castile rivers, which fed into the Princess Vlei, flooding it and killing the explorers.
Wow.
But, Emily, before she had completely melted into tears, the princess put a curse on the Vlei.
Ugh.
Every year, she said, she would require the life of a man as a sacrifice.
Oh my God.
In order to keep the Vlei's waters running.
Wow.
And so many, many generations later, young boys who sneaked off to the Vlei to fish would still approach the water with extreme caution, warned that the spirit of the wronged princess had taken on the form of a mermaid who would lure young boys or men to their death.
That's fun. That's a fun,
Isn't that
spooky
fun?
story.
Isn't that so good?
That's really good.
Yeah. It's like, I want to watch a movie about this.
Yeah.
So, Emily, the poetic nature of the Vlei and surrounding landmarks inspired many a verse as well. So, are you ready for some poetry as well?
Kyle, regale me with some poetry.
I knew you would be excited. For example, British poet Cullen Gouldsbury's 1909 poem Out of the Vlei begins, "Out of the Vlei where the veldt is burning, out and away to the northern lands, where life's a hum and the wheels are turning, souls stretch out with their shadow hands."
Beautiful. Veldt is like another geographical term, isn't it?
It is, Emily.
Like an African one specifically, right?
It is, Emily.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
ask me what, because I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you. Veldt comes also from Afrikaans, from the Dutch for field, and it just means open grassland.
Sure.
The veldt. Here's some more for you, Em. This is part of a 1911 poem called Moonlight by Denis Lefebvre, and it reads, "The earth beneath, half hidden, half revealed, breathes mellowed beauty where each fairy beam bathes kloof and vlei and kraal and mealy field, and willows swaying sadly o'er a stream."
Okay, those words I didn't know. But it sounded very lovely. It sounds very
lovely,
like
right?
lullaby-ish.
Yeah, Emily, kloof comes from Afrikaans and Dutch, and it means a deep, narrow valley or ravine.
Oh, sure.
Kraal comes from Dutch and Portuguese, actually, the Portuguese word for corral, and it originally meant a traditional African village, though it can now be used pejoratively as in an unsophisticated or rural village. And because of the corral background, can also mean an enclosure of livestock, a kraal.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you know what mealy is in mealy field?
Mealy, like Mealy?
Mealie.
Oh, no.
What would you have thought mealy, mealy was?
Like mealy, like
Oh.
the consistency.
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of. Mealy, in this sense, is maize or corn.
Oh,
So
yeah.
a mealy field is a cornfield.
Sure. That
Yeah.
does make sense.
All right, Emily, before we begin to wrap up, we have to explain how that broader definition of just any wetland, marsh, or swamp came about,
Oh,
right?
sure. Yeah.
We haven't talked about it. It's the 500-pound elephant in the room, or whatever other animals live in South Africa.
Uh-huh.
Emily, you talked about it earlier, but can you think of any other places that may have been affected by Dutch colonialism?
The States?
Oh, which state, Emily?
Which state?
Which state, Emily?
New York?
Emily, you see, decades before the Dutch East India Company landed on the Cape of Good Hope, they sent an English explorer named Henry Hudson sailing west to find a passage to Asia.
Yeah.
He didn't find that passage. Instead, he wound up in the New World and discovered fertile land along what's now known as the Hudson River.
Yes.
And the surrounding Hudson Valley.
Yes. Hudson is Dutch. I know that because I lived there for 4 years.
Well, Henry Hudson himself was English, but he was hired by the Dutch.
Yeah.
And his discovering the Hudson Valley laid the foundation for the Dutch West India Company. That's another one of their companies.
Sure. Because that was like something they called America, right? The West Indies?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they thought it was a different part of the Indies.
Yes.
But he laid the foundation for the Dutch West India Company to begin colonizing an area that the Dutch called New Netherlands, which, like the Dutch Cape Colony, was also taken by the British and eventually became New York.
Wow. But I feel like we don't have many swamps.
Well, Emily, the New Netherlanders began to develop their own dialect called Hudson Valley Dutch.
Oh.
And just like the Afrikaners, when confronted by foreign wetlands, of which there are a number of, were more before we started building buildings in New York, the Hudson Valley Dutch shortened the Dutch Vlei, but pronounced it Vlei. And though their Vlei could be spelled V-L-E-I like Vlei, was more often spelled V-L-Y or V-L-A-I-E.
A-I-E.
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
Okay.
So, Emily, thus, many New York locations contain the word Vlei. Take, for instance, Vlei Mountain, part of the Catskill Mountains.
Wow.
Or Franklinton Vlei, a swamp in Schoharie County.
Schoharie County.
Yep, which
Never
is in
mind.
New York.
Wow.
I know, right? And just like Vlei, Emily, Vlei could be pronounced with an F. And so fly also made its way into place names, such as Burnt Fly Bog in New Jersey.
Wow. But that, if you looked at that, you would just assume it was a fly like bug.
But it's not. It's fly like Vlei.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because it's a bog. It's a swamp.
Yeah.
There was also the Fly Market, a famous outdoor market in Manhattan that ran from 1699 through the early 1800s and was named as such as it was originally a salt marsh.
Kyle, are you telling me this is where flea market comes from?
Emily, you see, the fly market is of interest to us as etymologists because it is one of the proposed origins for the term flea market, which, as you may know, describes either a temporary outdoor market or a permanent indoor market, either of which that sells inexpensive antiques and curios.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
But fantastic.
It is a lesser accepted etymology for flea market. The prevailing consensus links the term to the French market marché aux puces, which is literally translated to market of fleas. And it was named this because it was rumored that the goods there were infested with bugs.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
No, I like this one better. I like the Vlei market. It's certainly less gross.
It's certainly less gross, yeah. Emily, regardless, Dutch colonialism left a great marshy impression on both hemispheres of the globe, and is the reason why, if you're ever in South Africa or New York, you can put on your netted safari hat and visit a local Vlei or Vlei.
Wow. Fantastic, Kyle. It feels like you did take us on a journey.
That's my hope.
An intercontinental journey.
Watch your step getting out. You can grab your pictures at the picture booth.
I was just going to say. Really great word, Kyle. I loved all that.
Thank you, Emily. Well, did you love it enough to answer this question? Emily, can you use Vlei or Vlei in a sentence?
Yes, I can. And
Okay.
I've answered the question. And now we can
Awesome.
move on.
All right. Your next task.
Okay. Vlei in a sentence. When I'm constructing a world for my D&D game,
Mhm.
I like to have a variety of ecosystems. Mountains and grasslands and vleis and everything in between.
Beautiful, Emily. Chef's kiss.
Ah, thanks,
Shrek's
Kyle.
kiss.
Shrek's kiss.
Emily, are you ready to play a game now?
I'm so ready.
Awesome. Emily, your game today is called Vlei the American Way. So Vleis aren't the only Dutch influence on New York place names.
I bet.
Emily. For this game, I'm going to give you some etymologies, and you'll have to work backwards to determine the location in New York that I am talking about.
Are they all going to be locations I know, or am I going
Yes.
from scratch? Okay, cool.
No, yeah, they're very well-known locations. There's only
Amazing.
3 of them.
Okay.
So your first question, this source of both globetrotters and a renaissance may come from a Dutch personal name or a combination of words meaning home on a forested dune.
Oh, that's fun. I think I knew this was Dutch. I just didn't know any details about it. It's Harlem.
It's Harlem, Emily.
Yeah.
So it was originally called New Harlem.
Is it like 2 A's?
Yes, 2 A's. You
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Harlem. I can't say it. But it's named after the Dutch city Haarlem. And that city possibly gets its name either from a combination of the given name Harala and the Old Dutch word heem, which meant home or settlement, or a combination of har, which meant elevated place, low, meaning forest, and heem, meaning home. So home on a foresty, elevated place.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep. All right, Emily, your next one.
Okay.
This road, originally called Het Singel, or the Belt by the Dutch, earned its name from the rampart erected to protect New Amsterdam from a possible British invasion in 1654.
Huh. Isn't there a road that's like the Beltway?
It's not where it has its modern name from, Emily. Its modern name comes from the rampart.
I'm stumped.
Well, a rampart is... There's another word for rampart, Emily, that comes from the Proto-Indo-European root well that we talked about earlier today.
It's all a blur.
What is a rampart, Emily?
It's like maybe I don't know what a rampart is.
I don't think Emily knows what a rampart is.
I have like a vague idea, but no one's ever asked me specifically. You know, like it's in the anthem.
Well, Emily, I'm going to tell you what a rampart is, and then I'm going to tell you what the answer is. Emily, a rampart is a wall, and this is Wall Street
Wall
that
Street.
I'm talking about. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
After the English took over, they referred to the street in like a mixture of Dutch and German still, instead of in English. They called it Het Singel of de Stadwal, or the Belt, or the City Wall. And that eventually just shortened into Wall Street.
As it should.
As it should, yeah. Okay, Emily, you're 1 for 2. You got one more.
Okay.
Ready? This New York City borough, known for its eponymous bridge, comes from the Dutch word for wetland or marsh.
Oh, Brooklyn. Brookland. Yeah,
Brooklyn. Yes, Emily.
that makes so much sense.
Does it make sense? It doesn't come from brook, as in a stream.
Oh,
It's named after the Dutch township Breukelen, from the Dutch broek, which meant wetland or marsh. That's just the Dutch word for marsh, is
crazy.
broek. Yeah, isn't that crazy? And so it may have been influenced by the English word brook, but it also may have been influenced by an early Dutch name for Western Long Island, which was Gebrokenland or Broken Land.
Sure. I mean, it does look like, if you look at it on the map, it looks busted up.
How'd you like the Vleis? How'd you like the Vleis?
This was such a good episode, Kyle. This was so fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And now I feel like we got to go visit, as New Yorkers ourselves, we have to go visit a Vlei to cap it all off.
A New York Vlei. And then we'll go to South Africa.
Listen, dead Vlei looks gorgeous.
I bet.
I want to go.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Remember that you can find Butter No Parsnips on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Butter No Parsnips Podcast, and on TikTok at Butter No Parsnips. And if you liked today's episode, consider giving us a 5-star rating or review wherever you heard us.
And if you really liked today's episode, consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/butternoparsnips. Donating $5 or more earns you a shout out, either on social media or here on the podcast.
Thanks so much to all of you. You help us make what we make.
And with that, I've been Kyle Imperator.
And I've been Emily Moyers, and this has been Butter No Parsnips.
Butter No Parsnips is produced by Seth Glicksman, Emily Moyers, and myself, Kyle Imperator. The main and accompanying themes were composed by Kyle Imperator.